number 6, Dr. Kennedy Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Associate Minister.
Order. I do want to hear Dr. Kennedy Graham. I thank honourable members. Order. Dr. Kennedy Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Associate Minister for Climate Change Issues, International Negotiations, and asks, what percentage of emission cuts for 2020 will the New Zealand Government commit to at the Bonn conference in light of the EU commitment to cut emissions by at least 20% and broadly comparable statements of intent by Australia and the United States?
The Honourable Tim Grosser.
New Zealand does not propose to announce a domestic medium-term target at the current UNFCCC meeting in Bonn. The Cabinet has signed off on New Zealand's climate change negotiating stance, which includes a commitment to the global goal of 450 parts per million of CO2 equivalent, and also signed off on New Zealand's goal of a 50% reduction in net 1990 emissions by 2050. There is considerable uncertainty over New Zealand's net emissions figures, which the government is working hard to right now. And until we get reliable figures on that, we are not in a position to go further.
Dr. Kennedy Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Minister explain why this government is unable to make a clear decision on emission cuts by 2020, not 2050, when the US Chief Climate Change Negotiator has recently forewarned that, quote, those who hang back will be economic losers in the end?
The Honourable Tim Grosser.
Well, as I stated in my answer to the primary question, we first of all need to know exactly where we stand in terms of net emissions before taking a position for or against.
Dr. Kennedy Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In light of that comment, when will the Minister admit that New Zealand is in fact not a leader, not a fast follower, but a climate laggard now, and that we will be economic losers in the global green economy which is now coming?
The Honourable Tim Grosser.
What I can say is that this issue about fast follower or wherever you were in the rank of nations responding to this great global challenge was debated extensively during the election. We were elected by New Zealand to govern on a matter of balance between our environmental and our economic objectives, and that is what we are committed to.
Nikki Wagner.
Mr. Speaker, to the Associate Minister of Climate Change, has the Minister received any updates from the negotiations in Bonn?
The Honourable Tim Grosser.
Yes, I am receiving updates. The member will be aware that the meeting is still progressing, of course. Last night, New Zealand presented on the UNFCCC stage. I believe we are making a contribution in Bonn to help shape international thinking on the objective and fair approach to sharing the effort on reducing emissions, taking account of different countries' national circumstances. Our presentation was well received, except, of course, Greenpeace managed to present us with the Fossil of the Day award, but that's almost a badge of honour, I think, since it's unlikely that Greenpeace would ever have more than one objective that they sought to reconcile. And we will continue to work closely with countries to advance this thinking. This week, to elaborate further to the member, we'll be participating in a workshop on the challenges and opportunities for reducing emissions from agriculture, an issue of great importance to the world, particularly in the context of developing countries making a contribution during the second commitment period. People are aware that New Zealand is a leader in research in the reduction of agricultural emissions.
Dr. Kennedy Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is the Minister in any way influenced by the Copenhagen Scientific Congress, which stated in March that weaker targets for 2020 increase the risk of passing the point of no return?
The Honourable Tim Grosser.
I'm not familiar with which precise scientific finding, but it's certainly consistent with a number of scientific findings that I've heard, which indicate even at 450, for example, it may not be sufficient. So there's a range of views out there. I'm very much aware of those range of views, yes.
Dr. Kennedy Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In light of the Minister's response then and to the previous question pertaining to atmospheric carbon concentration, will the Minister and his government now commit to the international goal of a 2-degree cap in global temperature increase? Yes or no?
The Honourable Tim Grosser.
At this stage, we are committing to the different objective of committing to try and achieve 450 parts per million, which is equivalent to, on current estimates, reducing the otherwise increase in temperature to an increase in 2 degrees. So they're similar, but we're choosing at this stage to focus on that as the measure, but the indirect effect is indeed to reduce temperatures globally on the basis of the current science by somewhat less than would otherwise be the case.
Seek leave.
Point of order, is it?
Point of order,
Dr. Kennedy Graham.
Mr. Speaker, I seek leave to table a document which is the summary report by the International Scientific Congress on climate change held in Copenhagen on the 12th of March.
Leave is sought to table that document. Is there any objection? There is none.